Welcome to Connect the Plots with Cylia and Erik, a podcast about the stories that connect us.
3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hi, everybody. I'm Erik Grove, and I'm a writer. This is my friend Cylia, and she's a reader. We are also joined today by the Chaos Goblin. No, this is our third attempt to record a conversation after our discussion with Misha Stone, Reader's Advisory Librarian. We have had some technical difficulties. I don't think I can be blamed for this.
No. I had to reboot my router, and I did a hard called my internet company pushed router reboot, and I did a hard power cycle reboot of my I did a Wi-Fi router hard cycle after a modem power cycle and a modem push reboot. So we'll see how far we get.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, our first attempt, I think we made it about 5 minutes before things started getting a little... Seven total, but I don't know how many of those were me talking to the frozen image of Cylia because you were in mid conversation. But you are on a little bit of a vacation right now. As Correct. I know, because we talked about
We've talked about it twice already, but I will not allow this to stop me because I really want to talk about these stories via video games. So,
okay.
Yes.
So you've been playing some video
Erik.
Games. Yeah.
I am playing video games with my spouse. That is the we, because it is late July as of this recording, and it is my 22nd wedding anniversary.
Woo! That is the third time I have congratulated.
It is sincere, you guys. It just sounds weird because it's literally he's been celebrating it over and over.
Also,
again
I congratulated you separately. Yeah,
Correct. Many times. I think you're the person that has, because of this, all celebrated us more than we have. Anyway, so yes, I've been married a long time, and. I'm taking time off of work, which is great. 2 primary story things, because I just really enjoy stories. If you can't tell, I wrote my friend into a podcast to talk about stories in my off time. 1, I was able to inhale a book, not just read it in piecemeal to get to sleep, but actually read it in less than 24 hours, and that very much felt like being immersed in the story, spa-like, and coming out like a spa, very refreshed and restored, and it's really saturated in. And I've been playing video games, which I don't normally do during work time because of the time sink of it all. Yesterday I played 7 hours, and I'm like, oh no, I still have to do my workout, and because I'm doing strength training. And write up notes for the pod. So I often only these days play when I'm on vacation. Although, of course, I played during the pandemic as well. Of course, being because I couldn't go anywhere. So I focus on cozy games. For me, cozy includes a game called Cozy Grove. Specifically, the one I'm playing right now is Cozy Grove Camp Spirit, which is the second.
No relation, folks.
It initially came out.
My jokes get funnier the more I repeat them.
Yeah, it's that is how humor works, for sure. Although you as a spirit bear, So Cozy Grove is you're a spirit scout, which is a creepy child. You are marooned on an island with spirits of bears, which are just anthropomorphized, and they take on the visual aspects of whatever is holding them to this plane of existence that they haven't resolved before they go on and ascend to the next plane. And your job as a camp a spirit scout is to like talk to them, and via friendship and conversations and little mini quests, you help them process their unresolved issues, which can get it's still kid focused. I wouldn't say it's totally dark, but it grapples with real like challenges around betrayal and friendship and family dynamics and family expectations not matching what you do, and the compromises you make in life to get through that may not align with what you truly wanted to do. Like, there's some like heavy stuff, but it's all very nurturing, and there's like piles of bones that you like that you like toss up to find materials in, and it's just lovely. And you can't speed run it, you can't marathon it, you only have certain things per day, so it invites you to come back day after day and just do some chores and talk to your friends, and you get incremental progress. And the visuals are gorgeous. Like, it's all black and white until like you light it up via either the spirit having another realization or you placing lamps. And so then it's this watercolor spread from black and white to gorgeous color. Like, the art is gorgeous. So really endorse that. And then also with the spouse playing Coral Island, which is Stardew Valley, but really pretty art. And I think it's like the latest expansion was Kisses and Ocean, so now there's mermaids. We're like ignoring all the romance smooch options because we really just want to earn some money to level up our tools and get the farm going.
So I think one of the things that is striking to me about video games in the modern era is how many of them are just like, and then I'm gonna do this job that's like a blue collar minimum wage job. You know, like when you're describing the Cozy Grove game, I'm thinking like, is this normalizing child labor? Like this poor kid is like not going to school, but is instead dealing with other people's like emotional labor, has to go out. I gotta take a pickaxe
to that rock to get some iron, to smelt the iron, to build the tool.
I'm not, I think I've mentioned before on the pod that I'm not much of a video game player. It just doesn't connect properly to my brain architecture. But it is striking that like, you know, like a lot of people are like, this is such a relaxing game. I just hit this button over and over and over again, and then I chop the wood. And then when I've chopped enough wood, I can make a fire. And then when I've made a fire, I can chop the vegetables. And then once I've chopped the vegetables, I can make the soup. And then once I had the soup, I can just sit back and go, ah. And I...
You know what it is? It is the... So often at work and in non-work life, things are very complex, and if you see the fruits of your labor, it may be months or years in the future, or you may never, and you don't know. This is a very discrete set of things, and once you're done, you get an output, and then it's done.
I mean, I have heard, and I don't know, like, this is maybe one of those, like, I want to say, like, pre-internet urban legends, possibly, that, like, the people with the most satisfaction in their jobs are bricklayers and, tombstone carvers. Because they get to you
immediately see the output of your effort. The
physical output of your effort. So the difference between, like, what did you do today? Well, I spent 8 hours strategizing for the corporate synergy machine or whatnot, as so much.
Or you just created 3 feet of
or
brick.
Like more than 3 feet. I mean, have you ever built a brick wall? I mean, when you've locked somebody
outside of a video game.
Well, when you've locked somebody in like that room inside of an abandoned castle or whatever for vengeance, it goes very fast. Like it's a very quick process. It's just like a little bit of mortar, clink, 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 clink. You can wall a person you can put somebody in a good cask for like, it doesn't take that long. Like that's a misnomer. I feel like modern society has suggested to us that if you're gonna lock one of your enemies in a wall behind bricks, it's gonna take you a very long time. But it doesn't. It doesn't take that long at all.
You too can mimic the Count of Monte Cristo. I did almost spit coffee all over my very expensive mic because it took me a second to realize where you were going with that. So
I appreciate the way that our energies are meeting today, because where you are in your refresh, vacation, getting simmering in story. This is for me the highest, like one of the highest stress points of recent times, because I'm.
But why?
Yeah, well, I've got not one, not two, but 3 writing conferences coming up that I have a lot of work invested in. When this airs, one of them will have happened, which is the Willamette Writers Conference, which is what I do for my day job. And the next one will be upcoming, which will be Worldcon in Anaheim, which is, of the 3, the one that I am having the most stress dreams about, but have the least responsibility for, which I don't understand that. But and then the third one is that I'm planning a writers conference here in the Portland, Oregon area that will happen in October. And we've just started selling tickets for that and advertising.
And the name of that is?
That is called the Endeavor Writers Conference. It is the first year that we're doing it, so we're kind of starting. We are beginning the bricks while the person, like, we're at like shin level with the bricklaying of the trapping the conference in the walls. But it'll go fast. It'll go super fast. That one, the idea behind it is that there is an award that's been given to science fiction and fantasy authors that are residents of the greater Pacific Northwest. And I use that term because it incorporates Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and more Canadian territories than I can ever remember. Like British Columbia, absolutely, but I think there's also like 2 or 3 more, and I'm a bad geography student, so I don't know all of the territories.
Those Western ones.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Endeavor Award has been given out for 25 plus years, and it found itself without an event to present the award, because the prior convention that used to host that awards ceremony has gone on an indefinite hiatus. So I've been kind of working with the people behind the award to start up a thing. So there's that, and then my novel, my debut novel, The Long Red Tomorrow, is for those of you just listening, Celia did a happy dance on the video. That book, I've been able to share the cover with people, and by the time this episode airs, it will also be available for people to pre-order, so you can get a copy of it. We're working on synchronizing so that the physical copy of the book, the ebook, and the audiobook will all be available at more or less the same time. And I think all 3 of them are going to be. I'm pretty excited about all 3 formats. Right, the print format, because as a writer, there's something tangible in that bricklaying sense to having a book in your hand and being able to sign it, or being able to like see it on a shelf. So that will be, for me, that will be the end of a long journey to get that book on the bookshelves. It is exciting to start to see listings populate on bookseller websites for people to be able to pre-order the print book, and then the ebook will be available soon, and the audiobook, which I'm also incredibly excited about. As we interviewed now a couple of weeks ago, Gary Bennett, an audiobook narrator, there is something really special about the partnership between story and an audiobook narrator. So all of that stuff is exciting. for those of you listening that would like to learn more about my book and or pre-order it, which I would love, or just maybe add it to your Goodreads or other like Storygraph or others like want to read lists, you can go to The Long Read Tomorrow, all spelled out, which will take you to it'll actually take you to a page on my webpage, but then that will have all that information just very specifically distilled for you. And if anybody that's listening is going to be at Worldcon, I will have some swag and some cool stuff that I will be showing off at Worldcon. Another thing that's really fun to show off and that I've been working on diligently, I've got an artist that's also a writer, but a friend of mine named Jordan Shively, who's doing like a really, really cool map that we're going to put in the book. And he's just started giving some samples that he and I have both shared a little bit on our social media. And again, it's like that tangible thing. Like you have a story and you have a concept in your head for years, and then you get to the point where you start to see the physical manifestation of that. And that map, one of the things I'm excited about is that I think Jordan brought this to the project because he's brilliant, and I recommend people check him out. He's also got some books out. So Jordan brought this sort of meta layer to the map, which is that the map image is sort of like it's literally like a blueprint, because it's a science fiction book. So it's sort of like the idea is that this is maybe a blueprint you would have found in the system, but we've added this sort of narrative layer where the map that you see in the book and in any of the promotion that we do with the map image has been turned into a physical artifact. Like somebody's gotten a printout of the map, and there's like coffee rings on it, and there's handwritten notes that are going to be in the margins, and like little scribbles that will be Easter eggs for people that are reading the book. And it's another opportunity for me to like integrate story into the visual component of the book.
Number one, I will also put the link for The Long Read Tomorrow in our Patreon book list, and extra show notes, and Erik will probably put it in the show notes of the podcast hosting sites as well. But if you're used to going to the Patreon to find the list of works we discussed or the links there, it will definitely be there. I have interesting... when I come across marginalia in the real world, I feel so two ways about it. Like on one hand, I'm like, oh, you wrote in a book that's sacrilegious, but also like, ooh, what did you write? Like what meant so much to someone that they would scribble on the thing? So it's it feels like both heretical and titillating to me at the same time, which I find it's probably I should unpack in one of our spin-off podcasts about our underpinnings of psychology.
One of the things that Jordan, I think, brings to a lot of the art that he creates is a found object mentality. I think that extra layer of reality, unreality, that he likes to play with in his work. So a lot of his art samples have got that kind of marginalia or like. One of the things that he does, and I'll make sure that we have the links for Jordan's websites also in the show notes and on the Patreon, but he has his own like subscription service where he will send you basically these envelopes full of like fascinating, weird story snippets. So they will have like newspaper cutouts, but they're newspaper cutouts that he has meticulously created and crafted. And so between like these different objects, you can kind of cobble together a story. And there will be like, there's like a business card, and like he creates like these really remarkable pieces of they're fake. I mean, they're not real newspaper clippings, but he crafts them, and then he has methodology to distress them both digitally and physically, so that he can provide people the experience of like, you get something in the mail, it's an envelope, you open up that envelope. Inside that envelope, you're going to find things that feel very organic. And that's kind of like an element that I'm really excited that he's bringing to some of the art projects that he and I are working on to promote the book, because it does bring that, like, maybe it is a little heretical, or maybe it does kind of blur the boundaries between fact and fiction, but I find that liminal space to be extremely interesting and complicated, and a lot of the themes that I'm dealing with in my book are the space between science fiction and reality. Like a lot of the thematic component that I'm kind of dealing with is the image of things, in the case of my book, Mars, or the future that might happen in space exploration, how that has been kind of envisioned, or in some cases like mythologized, even though it hasn't happened. But like there's this sort of mythology that we create in science fiction, and I've been kind of like, I'm really interested in the gaps between tangible reality and actual, like, mythology, or not actual but the mythology that we create. So those are the things that I find really interesting, in the friction between the two of them. So I will be talking, unfortunately, friends, about this book because I'm so excited about it. But if you run out of patience, I'm sorry. Like, as we talked about,
this is our whole thing. We get excited about the stuff not only that we're getting from others, but that we're working on. Like, that's our gig, you guys. We get hyped and we're super happy about it. And if that's not for you, then I get it. But that's what it works for us. So I'm very excited to read your book and story. I feel incredibly privileged that so many of my friends put creative works out into the world, particularly as it relates to stories, because those are so important to me. Speaking of Jordan's work, I have a friend of mine who has a website and a social media account called Salty Said Sweetly, and she and I was just hanging out at her house. She's like one of my best friends, and she helped manifest into reality this thing I always wanted, which was I love travel posters for fictional places. And she made a travel poster for Bendon Weir in the Pern series. And like, it is framed on my wall right now. I've made Erik look at it every time he's come over. Yeah. And literally I scribbled on with colored pens on a notebook, and she made it into a gorgeous piece of art. And to me, I can't even, it just delights me to no end that I know amazing people that can bring things from concept into reality.
I don't know if I've mentioned this, but one of the bits of artistic giveaways that we're working on, myself and Jordan, is literally like a tourist postcard for a fictional place, which is the setting of the book. But there's something very exciting about that vibe of the, and also our intention with that is that will be will be distressed, and you'll see the layer of reality, quote unquote, over the top of the shiny, happy tourism postcard. I'm excited to be able to share those things. I'll see as the podcast develops. I may throw some bonus material if the art syncs up with the edits on the episodes, and just share some stuff for people that are watching on YouTube. Right at the moment, things are sort of in flux as we record, but as I edit before we release, I might be able to just enter here.
Well,
and if that works, that'll be a really cool moment. But if it doesn't work, it'll just be me kind of jazz handsing at the camera.
Well, if nothing else, I think your release date's in early March of 2027. Yep. And so if you follow us on social media or Patreon, which we do have a free tier, we'll post stuff there as well, even in the fallow period between seasons.
Yeah, and some fun
speaking
stuff
of physical things, I'm gonna throw this out there in a way to try and get us to actually do it. But Erik and I are currently plotting to create business cards to bring with us to Worldcon, and I did some scribbling and created a bingo card because we've brought that up multiple times. I've already sent a draft to a friend, and the direct quote was, "Cozy body horror." Yeah. Well, that's terrifying.
If we make the designs work, and again, I'm just gonna jazz hands at the camera, and we're just gonna like jazz hands, and then business card here. If we make that work, it'll be a functional bingo card on some of our artifacts, and you know, this will be the beginning of the Connect the Plot swag for NorwestCon. When we first started kind of making our way into this, I had made some buttons. Was this well, actually, was it Worldcon? No, maybe it was Worldcon in Seattle. A little bit less than a year ago. I had made some various like promotional buttons with my button maker that we could wear.
But that was under the old pod concept.
We did have a different title for the podcast back then, which if you want to know what that was about and maybe see some of that apocrypha, we'll eventually probably share that on our Patreon. But we did a pivot on the podcast title and kind of the way that we wanted to approach it a little bit, because we've been working on it for a little while. So, and I think now that we've been doing this for a while, like now we're in episode 17, I think. I think we did okay. I think we settled on a good premise, and we've done well. We've done well with it. From the beginning, like when we sat down and we pulled out your original, note-taking notebook, there were a lot of names for guests and concepts that we threw out, and one of them was 100% Misha Stone. Like, Misha was part of, see, jazz hands, it just happened. For those of you that are just listening, Cylia showed off the infamous pages of notes from some of our earliest meetings. But I think Misha was part of our short list for guests from the beginning. Because we knew that when we were going to go into this, that we wanted to invite different perspectives on story, and we knew how important it was to both of us to talk to a librarian, because they're going to have, and she did, the most interesting insights. And for me, like the conversations that we got to have with Gary, Gary Bennett, the audiobook narrator, a couple episodes back, and Misha were both the most fun, but also the most personally informative, and felt like they were an opportunity for me to stretch my brain out and think in new and different ways about the ways to approach story. So I'm really, really pleased with that, and that we manifested getting both of them on, and they were gracious enough to join us. I know some people might see their names and might not recognize them, but they should. Both of them are amazing, and I'm really thrilled that we got Misha to talk to us about what being a reader's advisory librarian entails, because it so directly connects to what we're trying to do here.
Well, I first met Misha at the 2025 Worldcon in the Sifwa suite during the ultimately truncated karaoke evening. And when we had just decided at the NorwestCon 2025 to start this podcast, and we were still in the idea formative phase, we were handing out buttons, and when I was talking with Misha about it, the whole shtick of Cilia's algorithm. Like, you bring up a story and what you like about it, and instantly I'm like, ooh, but have you read that? And then, did you read this? And have you heard about that other one? And she goes, oh, that's a thing. That's a thing in library science. It's called Reader's Advisory. I'm like, wait, what? I could have done this for a job if only I had, like, come on, career counselor. Like, what were you doing back then? This would have been so great for me.
And I think for me, because I've known Misha for maybe a year, couple of few years longer than you have, from going to Norwest Con and doing stuff. Misha is I put out an anthology called The Muddy Goose Guide to the Weird Northwest last fall, and it was an interesting process. It was a small press, but I was talking to Misha about wanting to become more familiar with Seattle area venues, and Misha was great about giving some suggestions and recommendations for bookstores to reach out to, and was like, here's my card, contact me, we can, because she is so sincerely enthusiastic about connecting stories to their audiences. As a writer, like, I can't connect or understand writers that would not be excited to have a librarian recommend their work and stock it in the public library. Like, in the terms of, like, the bricklaying of it all, seeing my book on the shelf of a local library is going to be just as gratifying to me as seeing it on the bookshelf at a bookstore, right? Because that's how I consumed books. It still is how I consume a lot of my books. Yeah. It's so important. It's so important to authors and to their space to have stuff on library shelves. It's also just, libraries buy those books and libraries support those authors, and they're a huge part of our success story. The more they recommend our books, the more books the libraries need to stock. So
I in the conversation with Misha, I gave a detailed description of my childhood library that I visited from about 5th grade through high school, and most of, like, one of the similarities in our backgrounds is we grew up with limited financial means.
Yeah.
And that was the only way. Like, the books in my teachers' classrooms, the books in the school library, and the books in the public library was 95% of the books I was reading. Like, I had no allowance, and I had no dollars for obtaining books until I started working. So it's how I inhaled so many 70s and 80s and early 90s science fiction and fantasy. It's the bedrock of how I think about story.
When I was a kid, we moved a couple of times, but within a small geographical area. And the one of the libraries that was closer was a better library. That was close to where I'd been was a better library than where I ended up moving to. And I would talk my parents into driving an extra 15 minutes to go to the better library on a constant basis, and it kept me in books, because the county libraries that were where we'd moved to, or the local library where we'd moved to, just didn't have as much science fiction and fantasy stuff. And now I can go on my library's app and I could say, give me this book, please. And there's movement between all of the libraries within the same library system. That was a little bit more complicated back then. Like, it could happen. You could get interlibrary
Oh my gosh,
loans,
requesting libraries from the interlibrary loan system was both amazing and also...
Yeah, it took forever.
It felt like the lottery. Like, if you got something in from one of those, it was like, whoo!
Yeah. And even later than when I was growing up, working at the library at the University of Oregon when I was a student at the night library, at different points I would be assigned to the interlibrary loan books, which would be processing and setting aside the books that people sent for the interlibrary loan, and it seemed like magic back then, and now it's considerably easier. I love that, and I'm a little bit lazy about it because it is so easy, and I don't take it for granted, but I think that I don't always recognize the absolute magic of it, because for me, I just go in the library app and I'm like, I want that book, hit hold, and then they move it and they put it on the hold shelf for me, and I go to my library that's within like a few minutes of my house 2 or 3 times a week to pick up books and drop off books, and there have been a couple of occasions when I've picked up a book and I've looked at it, and just from like the indications on the spine, I'm like, oh, this was literally shelved in this library, like a few shelves away, but I put a hold on it and they put it in a section just for me. And I'm like, oh, I guess I could pay attention to stuff like that and just go looking and hunting. But I don't have to hunt in the library stacks anymore. The library just sort of, brings all the books to me. I love it.
I love the way that technology has made accessing the stories easier, and being able to look for and request and snag it. There's still something very special to me about browsing.
Yeah.
Whether that's going into the library hard copy stacks or a bookstore. Like just looking through it, and like whenever like I stumble upon something like that, it's like treasure hunting. There's something, I know some folks get really overwhelmed by it. To me, it's as someone who is both an atheist and a little witchy woo woo, it's kind of the closest I get to a religious experience.
I still make it a point to go into used bookstores. I don't know why. I like used bookstores more for that purpose, for browsing, because it feels like you stumble upon completely unexpected stuff. But there aren't as many used bookstores, at least around here, as I seem to remember them being. But the one thing that I used to do regularly, and I kind of miss this process, was I would go to record stores, CD stores particularly, and I would spend an hour going through the markdown sections, the ones that like the CDs maybe had a little bit of a scuff on them, or maybe the cases were a little scuffed, and I would walk out with stacks of CDs. And when the cost of the CD is so much lower because you're buying a used, slightly damaged version, and I had like a CD, like a little thing that would repair CDs. You could like put some stuff on it. So finding CDs for like $1 or $2, I'd be able to get so many CDs, and I'd walk out with stacks of them. And then it encourages you to try things that you maybe wouldn't try if they were just at the main retail location. I think libraries serve a similar function. Just psychologically speaking, if you're thinking about a book and it's a $30 book, you may hesitate if you're not familiar with the author or the work.
Like a blind buy, right? Like you don't know what you're getting. You're kind of doing a trust fall. This is, oh my gosh, I just had this vivid sense memory of going into, it was in Clackamas, Oregon, kind of by where the PetSmart is now, and it was like a CD store back when those, I'm dating myself, both of us, and I would also go in there, and I would preferentially try and find mix CDs that were like compiled. And I say it's interesting because I don't really gravitate towards short story magazines or anthologies. And I absolutely did that for music. And I found some of my favorite musical artists that way, like 07 and some of the other bands that I just really love and bring this real nostalgia for me. And it's making me connect to the fact that I should really set aside some of my intentional reading time towards anthology so I can find the same thing. I've actually found, I've backed a couple like Kickstarter anthologies and things like that, that were focused around things I liked, and found authors that I really liked that way. That's how I found Celia Lake and some others. And so like that is somehow I've never connected it that way again, and I really need to go back to do that. Like I've just always been like, I could read this super short story and want more, and there may not be any, or I could read like a 15-book series of everything I like and just bathe in it.
It has an interesting relationship to the concept of the algorithm, right? Because the experience on the internet, on internet commerce sites, is that they always want to recommend things that are as closely related to the thing that you just purchased as possible, because they think that that's what you want.
Just do another remake.
And yeah, I mean, or like and there is something like anti-algorithmic about just sort of going out into the wilds of the library, or the wilds of a used CD or used bookstore, or even I do this on a pretty regular basis still. I use a streaming service for music, but I will go into the new release, just the pure list of all the new releases that come out, and I will eyeball things based upon covers and musical genres. And every week I go in and I try a bunch of different albums or singles from new artists. Just like in reading and in music, and it was also really fun to bring on Misha because we were able to talk a little bit about music and the way that music kind of relates to story as well. But one of the things that I don't like to, I've commented, I think in our last discussion when we were plotting after the episode with Gary Bennett, about how I at some point kind of slowed down in my acquisition of hard copy books. Because I shifted to library and ebook consumption primarily. But that didn't mean that I stopped developing entirely new taste in books. It's the same thing for music. I know people, and there's nothing wrong with this, and I am guilty of it sometimes too, that I just sort of fall into like a nostalgic, thing. There's something I've read where a lot of people's taste in certain pop culture stuff, be it books, be it music, be it movies, calcifies at a certain point in their age, and I actively avoid that. And I think that's why, that's one of the fun things about this particular project, is that I think that it helps me to continue to look at things from different angles and different perspectives. And some of that is necessary. Like, I have to be able to create work. I have to be able to imagine new things, and I can't possibly imagine new things if I'm only ingesting old things. I need to challenge my preconceptions and my boundaries by bringing in new work, which is again why it's so fun to have recommendations from our guests, and books that come up, either books that are brand new. Because I have 100% been reading books that some of our guests have mentioned that are like, they're reading them as author review copies, or they're brand new and they've come out, and I've immediately gone and sought them out. Some of them that are like 20, 30 years old, I've gone and sought them out. But all of which being, a method to continue to diversify and expand out my taste, rather than just, my bookshelf stopped developing maybe in my early 30s, but my reading is only gotten more interesting.
I'd like to talk about what we've been reading.
I think it's
lately. Time. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Why don't I go first this time? I feel like you always go first because you're very excited. You're always so excited to share, I'm there for that. But I did. This is for continuity purposes. This is maybe 10 days after I think almost exactly 10 days since the last time we recorded an episode. So It's not as long, but I've been trying, and I'm not trying to compete with Cylia here, but I am trying to like get back to my like reading cadence. So I finished a few books since our last recording. I did finish October Film Haunt by Michael Wee Hunt, which is just a great book. I think it would not be the type of horror that I would recommend to you. Because it does lean into that like unsettledness, in particular of the ending. I think that there is a lot of ambiguity and weirdness, and there is sort of like a lingering dread. I love books that have a bit of lingering dread that I can hold on to, but that one may not be up your alley. I also read, and this was a recommendation from Mary Berman, because again, as I mentioned, a lot of the stuff from our early episodes, my library hold started coming in, or my book list caught up, and so I managed to read Bunny by Mona Awad, which was fabulous. It's a dark academia, I think, is where I've seen it in its subgenre, though I've had some interesting conversations about what that genre actually means, because it's sometimes confusing to me. But it basically is focused on the main character is a graduate student in an MFA or graduate writing program, and the initial hook is just that there is a small class. I think there's 5 of them total in the entire prose writing class, and 4 of the 5 are kind of part of a very specific clique of girls that all refer to themselves as Bunny and have very specific shared affectations. And then it just gets weirder and cultier and more interesting from there. I don't want to spoil this book because there are lots of twists and turns, but I would suggest that it is a compelling read. I would put it in like that crossover space of literary style and horror, and I think that's probably where it's found its audience. But I don't know. I very much enjoyed it. I had a blast reading it. I do have the copy from the library to hold up because this is my shtick. So this is the book from my local library, Bunny, by Mona Awad. Definitely one of the more... it is not a book that I maybe would have initially gravitated toward without that recommendation. I'd heard good things about it, but honestly, like dark academia, I see that label, and it doesn't always appeal to me the way that it may appeal to other people. Partially because it signals a particular age group for the characters, and I think this is one of the struggles that I have with YA sometimes, is that sometimes I lose my patience with young protagonists, where I'm like, all of your problems would be solved if you just, grew up a little bit and stopped being a teenager or a 20-something. I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, just stop being your age. Definitely great advice. I personally love dark academia. That is like my little high school goth coming out of it all. I really, for some reason, Bunny, every description I've had of it makes me wonder if it's in the not for Cylia list. Like it sounds a little creepy to me. However, like I really loved Naomi Novik's Scholomance series, and Cassandra Kha's, oh my gosh, I'm gonna forget this now. We even discussed it with Misha.
With Misha, yeah.
The Library at Hellbore. Like, I adored those. Like, Scholomance is like, sure, you go to like a wizarding high school, but what if the literal building and school is trying to eat you?
I don't think that the content is not for Cylia. I think that the content would not be the content itself. I don't think there's anything that would especially hit your the areas that you're uncomfortable. I do think, and this is why I emphasize that I think it would be categorized in like a lit horror world. One of the things that is more common in genre works, like more explicitly horror, horror less so actually, but more explicitly fantasy, which is where you do see a lot of the dark academia starts to go into that fantasy, maybe like horror fantasy. I think Naomi Novik it slants fantasy. And I think Cassandra Kah is like horror fantasy, but there is still a fantasy angle to it. I think most fantasy has a tendency to explain stuff, like why stuff happens. And I think weirder horror and literary fiction don't like
just leave it unexplained.
Just leave it unexplained. It's not relevant to the story. So if it's explained in sort of a brief way. And I will point to Mary Berman's book, which we both very much enjoyed, but there is not a tremendous amount of page count devoted to explaining the mythos in that book, because that's not what's important. What's important is the character emotional journey and the intimacy.
It's technically there, but it's like you have to pay really close attention to what certain people are saying, and it's between the lines.
It's just not like fantasy. And I'll be candid about this as both a writer and a reader. Sometimes I don't love this about fantasy. This is not always my happy place when it comes to fantasy. But fantasy sometimes feels like it's providing content for the future RPG source book, so that you can systematize it and create characters, and you have the rules required in order to make it happen. I do like. We've talked about this before. It's like, I like that lingering dread. I like ambiguity. I'm more than willing for them to be like, there's just a Minotaur. He's a Minotaur doing Minotaur things. You don't need to know where he came from. Like, it doesn't need to make sense. Like, I think one of my favorite, another favorite fantasy story is Piranesi by, Celia, rescue me. Susanna Clark. Is it Susan or Susanna?
I think it's Susanna.
Okay. Piranesi is a great book. Piranesi doesn't care to explain a lot of the details about how it makes sense. Like, you could not make a functional wiki article explaining the mythos of that book, because that book is much more concerned with the character and the intimacy of the story. So it's in that way that I think Bunny may be, I don't know if it would be not satisfying for you, but it's the only thing that I would mention to readers, is don't go into it expecting to have like a lit RPG experience where you're going to be like, well, this bunny is a level 3 such and such with this. And I love that. Like, we read the Feywild job, which you kind of, I mean, like, C specifically did do that. Like, C specifically created characters for the book so that they knew what their powers were going to be and their power sets were going to be. But that's not this book. Bunny is not that story.
I just think that they're, when we get into my book list, I'll talk about some ambiguity that I was good with, because you're right, it is very rare for me. I will say, and whether that's, I think there's some science nerdy background. I worked in academic medicine for a really long time, supporting federal research grants. So personally, there's something very viscerally satisfying of connecting all the pieces and having them slot in together, and like seeing the structure of it, and then starting to extrapolate, and then starting to like anticipate where the writer's going, and either have that paid off, which has like this very satisfying brain feel of like, aha, I like figured it out, or the twist, which is like the oh goodness, and the subverting those expectations. All of those things are very satisfying to me. I don't think one way is right or the other. I think that is the awesomeness of the diversity of different writing styles and different genre tropes or stylistic choices, is some people do want 3 pages explaining why faster than light travel works.
Right.
which is closer to Cilia's edge of the spectrum, and then that will totally bounce Erik off most of the time.
Yeah.
Erik wants, like, okay, you go fast, zoom, zoom. Like, what are people saying to each other?
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about the fact that, ironically, this was not my intention when we started this podcast, but ironically, as we've been going through this, I find that as I explore my taste in books, I feel more and more drawn to horror. Like, more and more, like, I am more confidently, strongly a horror reader, and strongly other types of fantasy and science fiction that lean in that horror direction. And I think it's for a handful of reasons. And one of them is that horror is a genre about intimacy. It's extremely concerned with.
Misha said that, like, both horror and romance are feelings genres.
And for sure on the feelings aspect, but there's also another element to it, which is that as a writing teacher, I will often talk about that, and this is almost such a stereotype with certain writers. We're like a broken record, which is that everything is about point of view. Like, how does faster than light travel work? Well, it depends on who's explaining it to you. If you're having faster than light travel explained to you by an engineer that understands faster than light transit in a book, that is a very different experience than if you have faster than light transit explained to you by, like, a ne'er-do-well who's like doesn't know how a spaceship engine works. And so, like, I'm comfortable with the engineer explaining it to me if that's in character for the engineer and it reveals something about the engineer and the engineer's background. But if suddenly I've got this, like scoundrel, this space scoundrel that would have no business being in an engine room, stop the narrative or stop a conversation and say, like, as you know, Bob, this uses the positively charged neutrinos, and then it puts it. That just ruins the story immersion and the character immersion for me. And so horror, like, that is fundamental to the genre. The October Film Haunt, God, I love, and I think part of it is I keep reading these horror books that are just so good. But October Film Haunt, one of the things that I really enjoy about it is that it is so close in the point of view of these characters that there are reveals that are happening, plot reveals, that the actual mechanics of the plot, they're interesting, but it's not nearly as interesting as the characters' experience of them and the way that they're interpreting them. So I'm very much interested in that point of view thing. And that's why I also lean towards that lit element, and why when I read Bunny, I was like, okay, the premise of the book is that this group of students is doing, and I'm just going to use the broadest term, magic. They're doing some magic. And the reason that I bring that up is because how that magic works doesn't really come up. Like, it's not, if it comes up, it's such a throwaway that it's not even, it doesn't stick to me. I do know that there is a sequel to this book, and I don't know if there's going to be another one after that. Possible that the sequel is just all people talking about how exactly bunny magic works. And I don't know how I would feel about that. But for this book, it's great. I also finished, got and consumed very, very promptly, because my library hold came in and it was short and it was good. One of my assigned books, Dawn by Octavia Butler, which was my first full-length Octavia Butler novel. It's great. I also totally understand why John Wiswell would have suggested a different one. To me, and maybe to me in particular, but maybe to readers like me. I like this book. It's a good book. I'm happy that I read it. I want to read the next books in the series, but there's a lot of explaining mechanics that I just don't have a lot of emotional connection to. Like, the book for me is split in half between the first half, where it's the main character Lilith alone with these aliens, which I'm not going to spoil, and then the second half where Lilith is interacting more with humans. And it's in that second half where Lilith is interacting with the other humans that the book honestly didn't lose me, because the first half of the book could have lost me. The writing is good. It's strong. It's excellent. I can see, like from a craft and a storytelling perspective, I can see why Butler is a master of the craft. Like, I can see why Butler is deservedly well lauded. I get that. But from like a story perspective, I became much more engaged once there were relationships. Though there are some interesting relationships that are happening prior to the humans that appear, but it's the human stuff that really takes it up a notch for me.
Yeah, and the Xenogenesis series, also called Lilith's Brood, I feel like the first book is foundational and you really have to read it first, but it really, for me, hits traction in the second and then pays off in the third. Like a good trilogy should do, right? Like you really want, I personally kind of consider it as a whole in my brain. I forget where book 1 leaves off and book 2 begins, but I remember that kind of narrative structure of it all. I bet Kindred by Octavia Butler, which John recommended to you.
I think it's going to be up my alley. And I immediately after finishing Dawn, I put in holds at my local library for both Kindred and the second book in the Lilith's Brood series.
Great.
I do have a question, and because I feel kind of silly, I can guess. But when you talked about this series, I don't remember if it was with John or with somebody else in a prior episode, you talked about that naming convention that shift between Lilith's Brood and Xenogenesis. Mm-hmm. Having read just the first book, I totally understand why it's called Lilith's Brood. Because I don't recall the word Xenogenesis being used in this book. Mm-hmm. Is it come up in the second book, or is it more of a meta term?
I know what it means. It's been over 20 years since I've read this trilogy, to be clear.
Okay.
So I don't recall if the specific vocabulary word was used in it. It is, fundamentally, it is the impact of the central plot, though, is Xenogenesis, the evolution into other.
Yeah. And I get that. And I'm interested enough to continue to read the rest. I'm also probably, having read a little bit about what Kindred is about, that sounds like my
that's
stuff.
Erik Bate.
Like that's my stuff. I'm excited about that. Like that looks like it's going to be great. So I'm excited about that.
I mean, frankly, anything by Octavia is going to be fantastic.
I think it's all amazing. I don't know if this is standard in like if this has been, because you get the book from the librarian and it's unclear like what edition you're getting and whether or not they're going to carry forward certain things. But Octavia Butler wrote a first person about the author. That's included in this edition, and I'm going to read it real fast because I think it's awesome. Which is, I'm a 48-year-old writer who can remember being a 10-year-old writer and who expects someday to be an 80-year-old writer. I'm also comfortably asocial, a hermit in the middle of Los Angeles, a pessimist if I'm not careful, a feminist, a black, a former Baptist, an oil and water combination of ambition, laziness, insecurity, certainty, and drive, which, for like a personal statement, made me team Octavia Butler for life. Like that just like, that's awesome. It is not typical in 2026 to have an about the author that's in first person. It's much more common to do the third person styling for your bio. But I love that. That was fantastic.
Gosh, it looks like I'm trying to I can't do math in my head anymore. Let's see.
You're looking up that 80-year-old part.
Yeah, she passed away at 59 or 60.
Yeah, it's deeply sad. As I've mentioned before on the pod, at one point I was the assistant producer for the Nebula Awards that SIFWA puts on, and SIFWA a few years ago, I think 2023 was the first year that they did this, started giving for authors that So SIFL will bestow upon authors what they call like the Grand Master of basically of the genre. And so for 2026, it was N.K. Jemisin, which yes,
well
right?
deserved. Yeah,
yeah. And then, but in 2020, but there are authors that sadly pass before they've been given the honor. They only give the Grand Master to living author. So they created a new award called the Infinity Award. And the first year that they did the Infinity Award, they gave it to Octavia Butler. And so I got to work on that award ceremony. And that was. I kind of wish that I'd been more familiar with Octavia Butler's work when I was doing that, but at the time it was just, you got to get the show going. But now I can look back on that and feel like that was a really magical and special experience to be part of the crew, to make sure that Octavia Butler got the recognition that she deserved.
They're in the LA, I think it's the LA County Library. It's huge and gorgeous, and I visited when I was visiting a friend down there. They have a section dedicated to Octavia Butler, which I found out via this trip that she used to volunteer at the library all the time. And it's this studio where you can go in and learn things like 3D printing or computer programming or podcasting and like all of these things. And it's dedicated to both technology, but also sharing it with everyone in the community. And it's to me such a perfect encapsulation of what she was about. If we haven't already recommended to you Parables of the Sower, also by Octavia Butler, it is really about the power of community in a very similar way.
I think that this has lit a fuse for me to fill in my Octavia Butler reading list. So I'm excited about that. One of the experiences that I have reading some of these books that have been recommended from, like, as we've talked about, like that gap, 80s 90s latter part of the 20th century science fiction and fantasy novels, is there is a little bit of grief for me about, like, oh man, these are books that I would have loved to read when I was 13 or 14, like, and by various circumstances they were not offered. So, like, as much as my library, I certainly had all these books, my school did not support that. And so, like, that reader's advisory librarian role, that person that can guide you to sections of the library, that can take you to books that can kind of broaden your horizons. Like, I did not have that. So, like, I did read some science fiction and fantasy, but I think I got kind of stuck in a section of science fiction and fantasy that wasn't challenging me the way that I wanted it to, and which is why I drifted
Wasn't
away.
all it could have been.
Yeah. It was like that particular section was just not, like, I grew out of that section, and I would have, if I'd grown out of that section and I'd grown into the section with Le Guin and and Butler, and some of these other masters that I've now been reading, I think that would have been, I wish that I had that experience. I wish that my school experience had not been so satanic panic influenced. I wish that I had. I mean, there were some teachers that were not that way, but I wish that my school experience had enabled that. I wish that my family situation had enabled that. So there is a part, like, in the same way that I've commented about, like, connecting and reading the Anne McCaffrey books, kind of gives me an opportunity to experience what it would have been like to have been 11, to have discovered those books now. Yeah. as a 40-something. I feel like reading Dawn, I can only imagine how that would have hit if I'd read that when I was 15 or 16, because I feel like some of it would have gone over my head at 15 or 16, like, in particular some of the sexual dynamics that were going on in that book, which is one thing I really want to make sure that we talk about at some point in one of these podcast episodes. Maybe it needs to be like a whole special spin-off episode, which is how incredibly horny a lot of books from the 70s and 80s were. Like I think Dawn has.
We haven't even talked about Heinlein yet, and that's a whole.
But like there's some stuff in Dawn where it's just like, all right, like, you know, it's just there's some getting it on going on, and it is striking because I think that I came up so much in the post-AIDS literature. I think that the AIDS epidemic changed the way that people could interact with sexual liberation. And it's fascinating to me that it's just like I'm reading these books that were written or at least inspired by writings and from authors that were maybe a little bit less, but like the 90s in particular, I remember were like, if you have sex, you're going to get killed in the woods by a hockey mask man, or you're going to get a terminal disease. Like that's what you...
not just that, but I think it absolutely affected sex positivity. I also think it was a backlash, right, of the generational like free love movement of the 60s and early 70s. And then you go forward 20 years and all of a sudden it's children wanting to rebel against their parents in different ways. And I also think as a queer person, we lost a whole generation of elders who could have talked to us about things in a different way, who could have written stories that could have tackled it in a different way. And then we absolutely should have a whole separate discussion, whether that's its own podcast episode or something on Patreon, because there's a lot of grief, I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
And upset and frustration and institutional rage, like just because of how that was all handled. And I think for so many people that's in the past, and it's like the advent of these amazing drugs has made it no longer a death sentence, and there's prophylactic drugs now, so you don't catch it in the first place if you're both safe and taking these things responsibly. And that's not when I grew up. I grew up when if you have sex, you might die.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to explain generationally, to be to be like it's a big deal. And one of the other, I hate to see the parallel, but I see the parallel now between that backlash that used AIDS as an excuse to push back against sexual liberation and queer people in the 80s and into the 90s. I'm seeing that similar backlash now to queer people, for sure. So it clearly our American culture has a certain elasticity in the best and the worst ways. In the best ways, and that sometimes that culture can grow and change in really surprising ways. The difference, I think, for me between roughly like 2004 and 2014, like the 10 years and the differences in our culture and community in that 10-year period, like that was huge. Like we went from 2004 was when there were a wave of anti-gay marriage laws on the ballots for states, to 2014. It was legal and we were starting to see a shift. But then to see the same thing from 2014 to 2026, we see, 2004 to 2014, we saw it was elastic in a good way, and then 2014 to now, we see it's elastic in a bad way, and that it's snapping back, and we're seeing that, and that is for as much as we stay light and fluffy and want to be a fun, safe place to hang out in these conversations, like that is the anger that exists within the heart of me. Is that and that's just a whole kettle of fish. But I also read some other stuff.
Great.
I like hard pivot, folks. Sorry, I'm still making my way through Why I Love Horror, the collection of essays. I'm reading like an essay or two at a time, and I'm enjoying that. And again, maybe that is also helping me to embrace my inner horror love more than it ever was before. And I've started listening to on audiobook a book that Misha recommended because I found it at my library that was available pretty much immediately. And I remember being excited about it when Misha mentioned it, and then when I was reviewing the episode for editing, I remember going back and wanting to pick it up, and it's Mrs. Caliban by what is the author's name? I'm going to double check this because I want to make sure I get this right. Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Ingalls, which is it's awesome. It's really, really fun. It's basically about like a 1980s housewife that ends up sheltering a monster that is on the run, and it's great. And I'm gonna like telegraph my pick here and say that that's the book that I'm gonna assign you because I'm enjoying it so much. It's a novella. It's short. It was reissued. It looks like from publishers within the last 10 years.
Have you finished it yet, or is
I'm like 75% through. I'm working.
Bold. What if it ends in a way that makes it not for Cylia?
I don't think it will because the tone of it is not especially dark. It's much more like domestic. It's a very domestic story. Like the way that the monster's handled. And again, and maybe this is the other reason that I'm thinking about it. It's also a very horny book. It's a very horny book. It's got like if you liked The Shape of Water, the Guillermo del Toro movie, where
I haven't watched that movie, but my spouse did and really loved it because that the artsy side is over there.
It's a lovely love story between a woman and her creature from the Black Lagoon, and that is.
I feel like this is not a spoiler, but for those that are not familiar, Caliban is a character in William Shakespeare, The Tempest, and it is a half human, half monster creature.
I am not. What's interesting about that is that hasn't been brought up in the text yet. That may be something that gets brought up in that conclusion. Or maybe it's
just never referenced. Maybe it's just never referenced.
It's just in the title, and it kind of gives a vibe. But yeah, it's basically a woman who's unhappy for a variety of American reasons in the early 1980s. Has a monster friend, and it kind of
sexy monster friend,
and it's kind of like. She gets her joie de vivre back because of this monster.
Little known fact: Stella gets her groove back was an adaptation.
I don't know. Like it does have like this. Anyway, I'm giving it to you as assigned reading because I enjoy especially when assigned books are books that both of us have read and relatively recently. So I have a bias towards that.
Okay.
So that's my next up. I'm finishing that, and the next up I've got a hold coming in from the library for a science fiction book that was recommended to me called Slow Gods by Claire North, which I am looking forward to diving into. It's kind of a lauded, though. I guess the person that suggested it to me was saying that it should have been more celebrated, but I'm looking forward to giving that a read. And then after that, like I got Kindred coming up pretty quickly in my library holds from the library.
I've only read 2 books since we last discussed things a little over a week ago, in part because getting ready for this time off. But I finished The Elven Bane, which was delightful. I'm so looking forward to the rest of the re-releases under this new imprint. And I definitely want to go and once all 4 are released, get whatever quad special editions there are. Although I'm also, just for the nostalgia of it all, kind of wanting to go hunt down those early 90s covers just because they are so of their time, and just trigger that nostalgia in me. And I for those that did not know, I also highlighted this book on my guest appearance with on YouTube with Sirius Slack with Sirius Black. He's been so kind as to...
I think it's the other way around.
Sirius Slack with Sirius Black.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. To invite me on to just get jazzed about whatever stories I'm enjoying or want to shout out lately. So that is lovely, and I get into a little bit more on why there. The book that I read in less than 24 hours, that I emerged refreshed and spa-like from, was, oh my gosh, here it is, Sunward by, sorry guys, I'm navigating Windows, William Alexander. It was a 2026 Philip K. Dick finalist.
Okay.
And it says it's a novel. It read fast. It felt more novella length. I would agree with the cover copy that compared it to Becky Chambers and Octavia Butler in the gestalt or the feel of the story of it all. I found it very much in the found family cozy aspects, and it ends in a very ambiguous way that I actually found very satisfying, which I normally do not like. It's often off-putting to me. I'm like, wait, but what happened? But this ends in an ambiguous way that it's like, no, it's going to be okay. Like I don't know what made that difference for me, but it was just lovely. And I think I borrowed it from the library, and I think I need a hard copy of my own. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed it. Not in a bad way, it was delightful.
A small note to our listeners: the Philip K. Dick Award is given out at NorwestCon, which is our sort of our local. It's up in the Seattle area, so it's not Portland exactly, but it's our kind of our local Pacific Northwest convention, which I think we have a lot of connection to. It is an award given exclusively to books that are released not in hardcover; they are released only in paperback. So that
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the distinction for the Philip K. Dick Award. It's historically, I think it was intended to highlight mass market books that maybe would never have been given hardcover releases, but the publishing industry has shifted in some interesting ways, and that there are a lot of books that are being released not in hardcover.
Straight to trade paperback or mass market.
Yeah. But that is, I just wanted to share that little shout out. And for anybody that is listening to this podcast that's thinking about it, NorwestCon happens in Easter of every year. It's on Easter weekend. And I know that I literally earlier, like yesterday, I think I submitted my application to return for programming next year.
Oh shoot, I should probably do that.
And I will throw in an extra bit of incentive for me and for anybody that's thinking about going to NorwestCon. It's going to be like 3 weeks after my book release, so my book will be out in the world, and it will be my first. Maybe not my first. I don't know how it's going to play out, like timeline wise, but it will be my home convention with my book finally out. So I mean, I'll have a party hat the whole time.
Come hang out with us in 2027 at NorwestCon, guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm gonna be very excited to do that.
What I'm currently reading is Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I'm only in the first 15-20% of the story, and it's a secondary world fantasy with a dragon as one of its point of view characters. I mean, it just says Cylia right on it. And then next up, I need to read the WorldCon short stories because I'm rapidly approaching the due date for those, that voters packet, and there's a couple in progress books for the voters packet. I just need to finish up. I'm like, I'd put them on hold to do some others that were calling out to me. So I'm going to clean those up. So next we talk, maybe my have read list will be a little bit longer.
Well, and this episode airs, it's scheduled to air after voting is closed, I think, for
I think so, yeah.
Also, and this is just me flagrantly begging for attention, this episode is scheduled to air on my birthday.
Happy birthday, Erik!
Yeah. So, I'm going to jazz hands. There will be a birthday cake up here. And for my birthday, the gift that I am asking for everybody is pre-order my book. Ask the library to stock my book. Add it to your wish lists for your reading lists. That is my my particular birthday wish. And then also for the podcast, we don't push it extremely hard, but we do have a Patreon, and it does make a difference for folks that want to join and support us. We appreciate it. We've had some very generous people that have been supporting us through the Patreon. I think we're going to be probably weirdly between our seasons we're going to be seeing a lot more content going to the Patreon. It's sort of hard to maintain putting up bonus stuff on the Patreon while we're recording, but we're going to put a lot of cool stuff up there.
So you already telegraphed this. So my assignment is Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Engels.
Yep.
I'm gonna, please hold. Let's see. No, I'm gonna. Whew. I just took off my headphones to grab the book that I'm assigning you from our conversation with Misha, which is The Snow Queen by Joan Vinge. This is a non-hard cover copy, hard copy. The cover is from like the original art that is, or at least was on the cover that I picked up in my library in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's just so gorgeous, and I really recommend. I just love this book, and there's a couple sequels to it, but this to me is like a foundational book, and it's just lovely.
Awesome. I will look forward to borrowing that from you and not forgetting that I borrowed it from you, and in fact reading the copy that I borrowed from you.
We'll see. I did offer you Kindred, and then you ended up requesting it from the library, so.
It's just, I don't know. I want to support my library, Celia. We can classify it as my lack of executive function.
I'm not jealous of a library lending books to you. It's fine.
We can just basically say that I support libraries.
I think of the books I lent you, I think there's still one pending that you haven't read yet.
Yes, there is. There is still one in that stack that I haven't.
So,
I haven't gotten.
Not yet time for the exchange.
Not quite yet, but it will get there soon.
Well, I need to finish all this WorldCon self-assigned reading so that I can get to the books that you have assigned me.
Sounds good.
Okay, those are. I'll just hand wave and say those are also in my up next.
Hand wave.
You have jazz hands. I have hand wave.
Thanks everybody for listening. As always, until next time, keep reading. You've been listening to Connect the Plots with Cylia and Erik. Thanks. Please connect with us on social media. We're Connect the Plots Pod on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. You can also support us and gain access to exclusive content on our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/connecttheplots pod, all spelled out. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.